Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Non-Scripted Ramblings. I'm Kendall Richardson. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, I really do appreciate it. I know not many of you are watching, but I don't care. I'm here and I'm rambling and it's what I do. So I am very, very excited to get into this week's episode of Loki, of course. That's what we're here for. Episode 4, the Nexus Event. And I've just finished my second viewing, of course. But before I get into the hugeness of what happened, I just want to shout out my awesome new bling and gear I've got. My new Loki shirt that I got from Zing yesterday, treated myself, and I have Miss Minutes earrings now, and I love that very much. So yeah, go to Zing. Hashtag not sponsored. Anyway, so yes, this episode, I've decided that I'm probably not going to take my usual approach of going through the episode scene by scene, as I kind of did last week, because A, that made the episode go way too long, and B, I think there's just going to be so much discussion from me about certain key things that did happen that is just going to take a long time anyway. So I think I'm just going to get into it, just in terms of I don't know. I don't even know where to start with this, just because if I'm not breaking it down scene by scene, I don't really know where to start, just because, the major things that really happen in this episode for me are all huge, big things that, could be left to last equally. But I don't know, maybe I should just start with, the fact that we got to see Lady Sif again in this episode, which is really cool. Jamie Alexander reprising her role. I think there was rumours of a cameo from her in this series. So nice to see that come to fruition, of course. In a very Dormammu-like scene, which someone pointed out to me, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about Doctor Strange when that time loop was going on. Whoops. Bad Marvel fan I am. But no, that was really cool. A really, really cool little cameo from her. Look, that aside, I'm not entirely sold on her performance in those time loops. While she did kind of nail the repetitiveness of it, in the fact that like every single time she came out, her performance was pretty much identical. So that, mad props to her for that. But the delivery of her dialogue, the accent she's trying to do, the way she kind of carried herself in it, it didn't work for me. Yeah, I don't know. This is probably my least favorite version of Sif. Sorry. I didn't really like Jamie's performance in this episode. I don't know. It might just be me. Please feel free to comment below if I'm wrong about this. This is just my opinion. It doesn't take away from the fact that it was awesome to see her appear, because, we've kind of been dying for a Sif appearance even in the MCU since she was not in Ragnarok, but that was due to the actress's scheduling conflicts, of course. Jamie Alexander was in the middle of her show Blind Spot at the time, so she couldn't step away, but yeah, so, it was kind of implied that she survived somewhere in the universe, but we don't know. So, but then, this is a time loop, so that's not even anything to do with the Ragnarok and those events. But anyway, it was a very good, it was very interesting that they decided to, I don't know, I feel like they're kind of really reiterating these character beats that Loki needs to go through. In this scene, he goes from it goes from on a journey from he's in the memory and he's like, oh, this is fun, I did this, it was hilarious, and I went, had a bath and sipped some wine and it was fine and it didn't matter. But he keeps reliving it and 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 realizing that that it's really bad, and why he actually does it, because he says I crave attention because I'm a narcissist. Because I'm scared of being alone. and I love that moment of realization, and, you know, just kind of coming clean about who he is underneath it all, which he's been doing, you know, throughout these episodes, kind of really getting down to the baseness of who Loki is as a character and as a god. I was going to say person, but he's not a person, he's god. Demigod, if you will. So, yeah, and then I just, that really kind of pulled at the heartstrings quite a bit, because immediately Sif pulls him up, but then she... because it's this memory that's, you know, this is actual dialogue she actually said, like, you know, it really happened in the MCU eons ago, whenever it was. And she still feels the same, like, even though she's kind of taking on this new information from Loki, it still doesn't change how she feels about him. She's kind of like thinking, oh, I know you're like this, yeah, I'm glad you're realizing it. But at the end of the day, she's still like, you are alone and you always will be. And yeah, that kind of hurt a little bit to watch Loki go through that. But it was appropriate, like, it was great, I loved it. I thought it was a very good character moment, but it's just interesting that, you know, they decided to, I don't know, take a detour from the plot in this episode for him to have that moment. I mean, it kind of, it does play into the overall plot of the episode, which I will get into shortly, but, you know, and the implications of certain relationships that may or may not exist. But yeah, I know. It was just interesting the way that they decided to do that. But it worked for me. Like, I'm not, yeah, I liked it. I loved it. I liked it. I loved it. I love and I like you. Well, I guess from there, I may as well just go into the biggest thing, maybe one of the biggest things, I think, or implications for me from this episode, and that is the whole Loki and Sylvie thing. I don't even know what to call it at this point, because initially my reaction was, okay, you know, they like each other, or Loki definitely likes her, like there's some kind of emotional, maybe romantic connection there. You know, the scene on Lamentus 1 when they're about to die, you know, was so moving to me. I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was really well done, really well performed by both Tom and Sophia Di Martino. But just that, like, in that scene, they're sitting, and you know, Sylvie's like, you know, do you think what makes a Loki a Loki is the fact that we're always destined to lose? And Loki says, we may lose, sometimes painfully, but we don't die, we survive. And I loved that line so much. Mwah. Thank you very much for giving us that dialogue, because yeah, it's just, yeah, I don't know, it just speaks to me, because I've, you know, as a Loki fan, I've been a fan of this character for almost 8 years, and yeah, that kind of, it's just nice to have that kind of validation, I suppose, of, you know, no matter what he goes through, what iteration of the character we see, he survives. He's always found a way to survive, and, you know, it's just really, really nice. But then immediately, they have this moment where Sylvie places her hand on his arm, you know, in like a comforting way of like, you know, I get you, I understand you, and I'm here for you, and we're about to die, and it's just this whole thing. And then the way Loki reacts to that, like he's taken aback, and like he looks down at her touching him in that way, and it's like, what the hell? What's happening? And, you know, and then we cut to the TVA, and, you know, Mobius is commenting on the fact that, you know, have you ever seen a branch like that? Like, what's happening? So, you know, they're having this connection, and, you know, Loki's kind of, I think at first, my first takeaway was it's, you know, maybe it's a romantic thing, because the way he was looking at her and she was kind of looking at him, like I feel it more from, if there is a romantic connection between them, which I don't know if there is anymore, but based on what I've read and listened to after the episode I watched. Yeah, oh fuck, I lost my point. I took it as, Loki seems to be more, you know, maybe involved or attached to her than Sylvie is attached to him, if that makes sense. But in this moment, they were kind of on the same playing field a little bit. And I just love the way, like the look on Loki's face and the look on her face. And like as soon as like the massive bit of planet basically crashed, you know, not too far away from them, and it was about to level them. I just look immediately at, like, Loki moves his hand, like, you know, she was touching him, and then immediately he goes to grab her hand, and they hold on for dear life to each other because they're about to die, but then they turn to each other and look, and they have this beautiful moment of serenity, I suppose. It made me think of Rogue One, with Cassian Andor and Jyn Erso at the end of Rogue One. Spoilers for Rogue One, but the movie is nearly 5 years old. You know, they similarly go through an insane kind of event, and I mean, obviously the events of Rogue One are probably more insane than the events of Loki so far, but, you know, and they're two people, whether they're friends, they're, you know, partners, whatever, they have this connect, they've been through this shared experience, and now it's led to their equal, you know, demise, and they have this moment of just acceptance and just peacefulness of, like, you know, they did everything they were supposed to do, they were meant to do, and there's something they can do about it, so they're just, you know, they know they're about to be annihilated, so they're probably not even going to feel whatever happens to them, and I think Loki and Sylvie are probably the same, but the way they looked at each other just really, you know, and then you cut back to the TVA and the branch is just going up towards the red line, and that's when they come in and take them, but yeah, so that's huge. And then going later on, you know, during the interrogation scenes with Mobius and Loki, you know, Mobius comes to this conclusion because, you know, you know, Loki, like, I don't know, he was weird in that interrogation scene. I don't know why, like, his truthfulness and his, you know, deceit were just back and forth in this whole scene. Like, you know, at first he started telling the truth, then he started lying, then he started telling the truth, then he started lying. It was just back and forth. Very interesting. I kind of feel like maybe when he started lying about Sylvie and, you know, the fact that, oh, it was me all along, you know, she came to me on Asgard years ago, and together we hatched this plan and blah, 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 and, you know, and I was just like, come on, man, why are you doing this? Don't lie. You're not going to make anything better for yourself. Like, I think it was literally just a power play. It was a prideful thing that he did. I mean, it's Loki. It's what he does. It has to be about him. He can't handle the fact that, you know, Sylvie might actually be superior to him because she was the one that hatched this plan, and, you know, he just happened to be there at the end, you know, and that probably pisses him off. So it makes sense, but it was just like, come on, man. Especially after Mobius had not long before called him an asshole and a bad friend. Like, whoa. And Loki did not take that well at all. But it was enough for Loki to go, you know, before he got thrown in the time cell, to be like, the TVA's lying to you. And, you know, that plants the seed of doubt through Mobius and through Hunter B-15, which, you know, cascades to the eventuation of the plot of this episode, and it's really, really good. But you know, back to the scene, when, you know, when Loki's lying about Sylvie and all of that stuff, and Mobius says, you know, oh, well, we pruned her, she's dead, you know, she's gone already, we erased her, she fought against the Minutemen and B-15 took her out. And you immediately, like, Loki immediately drops the facade and is in the moment really going, no, this can't be happening. Like, you see it you see it in his eyes straight away, even though he says good riddance, like, Mobius is straight through him. you know, Mobius is very, very perceptive, and you know, I mean, we know this, like we've seen it in previous episodes, and he, you know, he knows Loki's very well. He knows this Loki very well, it seems, and that's on display again in this episode. But yeah, then he immediately just goes for the jugular, like, you like her, she likes you, this is really some twisted romantic relationship you two have got going on. Like, I can't believe this. It's breaking. No wonder it, you know, caused a Nexus event that broke the reality. It's breaking my reality right now. And then what's the other thing he says? Mobius calls Loki an incredible seismic narcissist. You fell for yourself, he says. And, you know, Loki's deny, of course. Like, he's, you know, I mean, he's not fully denying it, but he's trying to deny it and failing to, because it's written on his face. And Mobius is calling him out on it. But then, you know, I mean, it's not confirmed really either way how Loki does feel. Like, he definitely cares about her. We can see that. There is some level of care for her, whether it's a romantic love or if it's just a connection, because that seems to be the crux of where the story might go or might end up, because Mobius, once he comes to the fact that Loki's telling the truth and that the TVA is lying to him, that Ravonna is lying to him, and that they're all variants, you know, he comes to Loki and is like, okay, you're going to help me take the TVA down, because whatever happened between the two of you caused a Nexus event within an apocalypse that shouldn't happen. Therein lies the answer to stopping this whole thing. And we don't really get to hear an explanation of that, because immediately after that, in the first feels moment of the, well, not the first feels moment of the episode, but one of the big feels moments of the episode, we see Mobius pruned. And when I tell you I started getting teary, my lord, that was a moment. You know, because at that point in the episode, you know, spoilers for later, but we didn't know that pruning wasn't final. And, you know, and Loki in this moment doesn't know that. And so when the camera switches to Tom Hiddleston's face, and he's just like heartbreaking, because, you know, he cares about Mobius, and he has from the get-go, despite whatever he says. You know, they're bickering throughout this episode as proof of the fact that they both give a shit about each other, on whatever level that is, you know, however much it means to the other person, but they mean something to each other, at least as friends, and it's really nice to see Loki care that much about a person immediately, you know, following their apparent demise. It was really great and really well performed. Tom Hiddleston, again, nailing it. But yeah, we don't get to see what Mobius's kind of plan was. Although I was talking to a friend after the episode, and he thinks that maybe that getting pruned was part of Mobius's plan. And that's why he was being so unsubtle in the way he was acting around Ravonna. In her office when he, you know, nicked her tempad and is like, anyway, I'm going. Because I didn't like that. I was like, come on, man, you're smarter than that. So it stands to reason that he is smarter than that, and it was part of his plan all along. But we will find out next week, hopefully, what happens. But anyway, back to my thing. Yeah, so it seems to be that whatever the connection between Loki and Sylvie is, it's going to have a big impact on the future of the TVA, the future of this show. Now, before anyone gets on the ew self-cessed train, which I'm not on, just quietly, Kate Herron, the director, apparently, I haven't seen a direct quote from her, but I have seen it referenced in a couple of different articles that I read, stating that she says that it's the two of them as a romantic relationship is not a thing. It was not supposed to be a thing. It's, you know, like, I need to do some more digging and see if there's any more explanation as to, like, okay, we feel bad that we've made it come across this way. We didn't mean to. No, I think it's more of the fact that, like, you know, I suppose if that's how you perceive it, then that's fine, but that's not what we were trying to do. That's not what we're setting up, which makes me think as well that in hindsight, this whole connection between the two of them is going to make a lot more sense. And all the people out there who are worried about some kind of incest happening, their fears will be quelled. And look, I totally understand if you have a problem with two versions of the same person, maybe having feelings for each other. I totally get that. I really do. I, however, feel different. I, however, don't see it as an incestuous thing because they're essentially the same person. But then again, a lot of people were countered that. I read online and were like, yeah, but at the start of the episode, when we get to see backstory of Sylvie as a child in Asgard being taken by Ravonna when she was a hunter, they kind of seem to be implying that she's a different person. But, she's an alternate version of Loki. So people are like, oh, they're essentially like twins or they're brother and sister. I'm like, I don't think that's how it works. But again, if that's how you feel and you're having problems with it, I'm sorry. I'm totally sorry. That sucks. That maybe that's ruining the show for you. But that's not how I feel about it. I just want to let you know up front, but I totally understand people if they are having issues with that, if that's weird to them. But I honestly don't think that's what it is, and I don't think Marvel and Disney would be putting in an incestuous relationship in this show, period, if that's what it is, which kind of tracks with the stuff that apparently Kate Herron has said about it not being romantic. So I think it's kind of more about this connection, the fact that two Lokis, according to the TVA, should not exist to the point where they have this connection. So, and that is what has created this Nexus event. The fact that these two, and the fact that Loki himself, in this moment where the Nexus event starts, he's being touched in a way he's never been touched before. He's feeling validated, he's feeling cared about, appreciated maybe. For the first time in his life, there's someone else, someone else that really kind of cares, because he hasn't been through this redemptive arc, I suppose, with him and Thor in Ragnarok. That's not happened to this Loki, So, he's seen the footage of it, but he hasn't experienced it for himself, so he can only guess what that feels like. So then to have someone, and the fact that it just happens to be a Loki, a different version of himself, someone show him that care on kind of a human level, it's not something he's familiar with, and he even says that at the end of the episode, after they, find out the timekeepers are fake. What? We kind of all saw that coming, I suppose, but after that moment, and they're, it's just Loki and Sylvie standing there, and to be honest, I gotta say, before I get into it, I was very annoyed. that they didn't make sure that Ravonna was dead before being distracted by each other. That was probably the one thing about the end fight sequence I didn't like, or maybe was concerned about, is the fact that Loki seemed to be so distracted by Sylvie during that fight. He kept looking over at her, he kept calling out to her, I was just like, he's letting his emotions get in the way of things. And I suppose that's what Loki does. He does let his emotions get the better of him. In Thor 1, when he reacted to learning of his adoptiveness, he went from mischievous jealousy with Thor to, wanting to, basically destroy Jotunheim. He didn't handle it well. He's always kind of let his emotions, and we see it again in the Dark World, his emotions kind of get the better of him, so I guess that kind of falls in line with his character. I just don't like it when people I know, or characters I know that are smarter than that, when that happens to them. But I suppose it humanizes them in a way, because I know for a fact if it was me in that situation, and I was having this connection and not knowing what this connection is with this other person, I would keep looking at them. It's like, when you're, for example, if you have a crush on someone you work with, when you're at work, you're going to, and they're around, you're always going to be aware of where they are and what they're doing, and you're going to want to know what they're doing and at all times kind of thing, you know. So it's kind of that. Not to say that Loki does have a crush on Sylvie, but that's kind of the analogy I'm going with. At least it's one I can relate to. So yeah, I suppose it makes sense. But anyway, when at the end, I love the scene where Loki is trying to tell Sylvie something, and we don't really know what it was gonna be. We have a couple of different theories. The first main theory, and my initial reaction in the moment watching it for the first time, was he was gonna kiss her because he didn't know how else to explain how he felt. Because especially the fact that he's like, this is new to me. You know, he says, you know, Loki tells Sylvie, he's like, we'll figure this out. And Sylvie's like, how do you know that? And he's just like, because of what happened on Lamentus. And then just trails off a bit and then says, this is new for me. That was like, he just looked, that kind of goes exactly with his reaction at the start of the episode when he's not sure how to process what's happened, you know, what's happened to him in terms of feeling this way about another person on some level, you know, having someone give a shit about him, and now he's processing that and having understood what, you know, or understanding what Mobius said about how their connection could bring the whole place down, you know. And so at first I was like, okay, maybe he was going to admit that he's falling in love with her, maybe, I don't know. That's kind of where I thought it was going. And then, yeah, I thought maybe he was gonna, you know, kiss her, but then that didn't happen. But then the other thing I'm thinking he was maybe going to say is he was probably going to mention what Mobius said and just, you know, this is new for me. Mobius told me that we created a Nexus event on Lamentus 1 right before we were about to die, when we were looking at each other like that. There's something real between us, I don't know what it is, but we'll figure it out. You know, I think it was just going to be maybe some kind of exposition of, this is how I'm feeling, I'm not sure how I'm feeling, but we'll figure it out together. How do you feel? Like, I think he was just going to put all the cards on the table and fully admit that he has no idea what's going on, because, again, this is new for him. He's never had this kind of a connection with a person before, because clearly he feels some way about her, I think. Whether it's romantic or not, there is some, you know, some kind of connection. You know, and I suppose it's hard to relate to that only because not all of us have been in those kind of situations where you're facing your mortality as a god, and then in what you think is going to be your last moments alive, you know, you're suddenly just, oh my god, revelations are happening, epiphanies are happening, like, what's happening? Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know which is right. We'll find out next week, but to be honest, I'm happy for it to be whatever it is going to be. Yeah, it was very heartbreaking though, because he was just, I love the way Tom Hiddleston played it as just this awkward boy who doesn't know how to process his thoughts. You know, his physical body can't catch up with the thoughts in his mind, and he's acting all, you know, out of character in terms of, you know, because Loki's suave, his charm, independence, authority, and style, as he was proclaiming last week. You know, he's all about the illusion. He's all about the grandstanding. You know, he's smooth as hell, right? And here he's just having a real moment, doesn't know how to handle it, and Tom Hiddleston played it so well. It was amazing and beautiful to watch. And then came the moment of the episode where I was just in pieces because Ravonna was not dead, of course. And just as he's about to either kiss her or admit something or say something impactful, meaningful to Sylvie, she prunes him, and I started bucketing. I was like, I think I even yelled at the TV, like, no, you fuckers, like, no, Like I was distraught. I'm like, nah, why does this keep happening? Why does he keep dying? I was so upset. I was so upset, man. I was just a wreck. Because then, you know, immediately after pretty much credits roll and I'm just sitting there listening to the song that's, you know, talking about, you know, do you love me if you love me or whatever it is, and it was really nice, and I'm just tears everywhere, just going, oh god, I don't know what's happening. And I was just thinking, oh my god, is this like, have we gone through all this character development for nothing? If it was just supposed to lead to this, because I mean there's 2 episodes left, and does that mean we're gonna get, you know, Tom as an alternate Loki? I mean there's been footage of him in the Thor 1 outfit in Asgard in the throne room. Is that connected somehow? You know, the vote for Loki from the trailer, we still haven't seen that. Like, is that gonna be our new Loki? Like, so it was just, I was having all these thoughts going through my head, and then, you know, post-credit scene happens, guys. Post-credit scene. Oh my god. And I tell you what, I have not gone from bawling my eyes out to jumping for joy so fast in my entire life, because that's exactly what happened. My jaw was just, I couldn't shut, you literally could not have shut my mouth if you tried. Like, I was just like, what? In shock. You know, when Loki's like, is this hell? Am I dead? You know, just questioning what the hell's going on, because as far as he was aware, if you were pruned, you were erased, and that was it. You know, you were just essentially dead. It's why he got so upset over Mobius being pruned. And then we get, you know, Richard E. Grant voiceover. And he says, not yet, but you will be if you don't come with us. And then Loki's like rising up off the ground, staring kind of in disbelief at what he's seeing, and then we cut to the final shot of the episode, which is our Loki variants. We have Richard E. Grant as classic Loki. He is in the full OG comic book from the 60s Loki, you know, just with that very campy, bright grass green, bright yellow, and he's got a bag, a shoulder bag for some reason, which I didn't notice until someone pointed it out. So yeah, that's interesting. And he's standing there, and then on the other side, we have a very interesting looking character, who at first I was like, okay, it's a variant of Loki who gets Mjolnir, maybe. But then, you know, I was theorizing with some other friends, oh, maybe it's a different version of Thor, because like maybe this, where they are, is, you know, where all the pruned variants go in this like pocket dimension or something, or this state of limbo maybe. But then it was like, well, what if it's just a dimension where all the pruned Lokis go? Because, you know, as we found out in episode 2, all of the, you know, out of all of the variants they've pruned, there has been more Loki variants than any other, right? So I was like, okay, maybe it's just a pocket dimension of Lokis, but I feel like I'm leaning more towards the fact that it's where all the pruned people go, and that's, you know, of course, tells you straight away Mobius is alive and fine, so we can calm down from that, and that's good. We're happy about that. But then, yeah, in the credits, this version of Loki is actually a version of Loki. He's not Thor. He's credited as Boastful Loki, played by the actor Deobia Opar. Oh fuck, my writing. I can't read my writing at this point because I like scribbled it at the bottom of the page. Opare. Deobia Opare. I'm going with that pronunciation, and I apologize profusely if it's incorrect in any way. But yeah, he's looking badass, holding this like golden steampunk looking Mjolnir sort of thing, with like the Nordic kind of fur get up going on. No horns, that's fine. We'll find out more about him as time goes on. And then of course in the center we have Kid Loki, played by Jack Veal, looking very comic book inspired, loving the look there, loving the pose of the whole three of them. It's just fantastic. And he's holding either a crocodile or alligator version of Loki. And what? Just what? I've never heard of a version of Loki that is either a crocodile or an alligator before, ever. And I know a lot about this character. But it could be comic book deep cuts that I've missed over the years. So please comment down below if you know what that is referencing. I'm sure there will be many Easter egg videos pointing out what this is. I just don't know. But exciting nonetheless, because I think there is a comic book run or story where all of the Avengers and the characters are animals. Like there's a universe where that is a thing. So yeah, maybe that's the universe he's from. But anyway, yeah, and then that's the end of the show. That's the end of the episode, I should say. That's the end of the episode. My God, if the show ended there, I'd die. Yeah, so it's a bit of a roller coaster ride. This episode, I loved it. I loved it so much. I think it's phenomenal. I hated to see a lot of hate for it online, and I know most of that's coming at the possible self-cessed that is implied in this episode that we may or may not be getting. And I understand people's problems with that. But yeah, it was an insane episode. I mean, I so much happened. The emotions were through the roof, and I was literally, as soon as that post-credit scene ended, I stood up and I jumped for joy. I was jumping up and down, running around my lounge room like a little kid, just going, yes, 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 yes. I was very happy, very, very happy and relieved. But yeah, so many questions for next week. Sylvie has got Ravonna at the end of one of those pruning prods. And she's forcing her to tell everything. I'm kind of leaning more heavily than before into the theory that Kang the Conqueror, or at least a version of Kang the Conqueror, as there are many in the comics, is behind this. Because I think it would be too big of a coincidence, I think, for Ravonna Renslayer to be involved because of their connection in the comics, if Kang wasn't involved in the creation of this TVA, and the fact that we're getting Kang in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania I think it's next year, late next year or the year after, I can't remember now, but he's coming. Jonathan Majors is playing him, so I'm really looking forward to that, of course, but I do think he's got something to do with what's going on. And I'm so curious as to Ravonna Renslayer's backstory now, and I hope we get a little glimpse into that, because we did this, we already knew she was a hunter before she was a judge, right? Or the direct, underling of the Timekeepers. But because she knew what was going on, is she a variant, or is she actually the one and only Ravonna Renslayer? We don't know. She could be a variant that when she became a judge found out the truth about who the Timekeepers are and who's actually behind them. And then that's when maybe that relationship between Ravonna and Kang comes in. I don't know. But regardless, we'll see. I think it's all connected. Before I wrap up, I just want to say how much I loved Hunter B-15 in this episode. Wunmi Mosaku, killing it. I adored the scene where she learns that she's a variant was heartbreaking and so beautifully acted, so hats off to her. And the fact that she was the one to break in to the Timekeepers, sanctum, I guess. And, it's like for all time, always, and then like sets Sylvie and Loki's collars, off so they can be free. And but I think she immediately went down. Like I don't think she got pruned, but I think she got knocked out immediately after that, because we don't see her again for the rest of the episode. But nevertheless, she was fantastic. I loved this episode. I loved everything about it. Brilliant. Well, I loved pretty much almost everything about it. A couple of little minor nitpicks, but very minor nitpicks as they were. So I have probably left a lot of stuff out, maybe, I don't know. Stay tuned for a podcast called Fred, the next episode of that, where we will probably be talking about this episode in different ways, saying different things to what you've just heard me say in this video. So that'll be out in the next few days. But yeah, just, I don't know. I'm done. It's 40 minutes. I've hit my 40 minutes. I told you it was gonna be long, despite the fact I didn't recount the plot exactly like I have been. I told you, I knew it. Anyway, that is my cue to wrap up. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did too. Please comment below if you agree with any of my thoughts and theories. I would love to hear from you. That would be awesome. And thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I've been Kendall Richardson, and you've just experienced non-scripted ramblings.